Belle, you want to talk? Alright, let's talk.
We forget to listen. And when somebody is crying out, when somebody is struggling, they need their voice heard.
I was passed out in the backyard for 3 hours, coughing myself into a coma because I was choking to death on the fumes of light. It was the most pain I had ever been in my entire life because I could not force my body. Ding dong YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I'm the Jobless Coder, and mental health is a fucking joke. At least that's what every single boss, every teacher, every family member I've ever known thinks. While they may not say it in words, and these people are bound to be the types of people who are making posts on social media about mental health on a day like this. But actions speak louder than words. And as I have come to experience it, no one treats the subject of mental health seriously.
If you are obsessive compulsive, press 1 repeatedly.
And you know, maybe they're right. Maybe it is nothing but a big joke. Because no one in the failing social services seems to give a shit whether I get treated or not, whether I lived or died. When you go to the doctor and you are screaming at the top of your lungs, I am not well, I am sick, somebody please help me. You know what the doctor will do? He's going to pull out his prescription pad, write you a prescription for some drugs that do not work. He's going to tell you to sit in the corner and sing Kumbaya, and everything's going to be sunshine, lollipops, and goddamn rainbows from now on. And in many cases, these drugs are proven to cause more damage than healing.
So the cure is more harmful than the condition?
Probably is, yeah.
When I was still religious, I used to beg on my knees, crying my eyes out to God. Dear God, please don't rip my family apart. My mental illness is destroying my relationship with my family. When my mother, who is still religious, locks herself in a room and cries herself because she doesn't know what to do with her sick son, and she is praying, dear God, please don't make my son suffer anymore. When all my friends and family are praying in mass for me to get better, God says, fuck you, bitch. I'm gonna make your life even worse. I'm gonna make you suffer even more. And so I came to realize that a loving God cannot possibly exist. For any God that does exist is a psychopathic narcissist that gets off on making my life eternal suffering. And so I turned my back and walked out of church, and I never went back. And no threat of burning in hell for my sins could ever appease my soul, for as far as I'm concerned, I'm already there. On the scientific side of things, no doctor could ever fix what is wrong with me. There is a difference between treatment and cure, and there is no cure for OCD. None! And a vast majority of other mental illnesses. At this point, I can't think of a single mental disorder that I haven't personally experienced. OCD, anxiety, depression, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, psychosis. I have been in and out of therapy since I was 6 and dosed on 20 different medications in my life, and nothing ever did a damn good for me. If the same amount of funding that went into, say, cancer research was redirected towards mental health, we would be 30 years advanced in technology from where we are today. And in most cases, the drugs that are prescribed to people suffering OCD are not even made specifically for the OCD illness. Most of the OCD medication is medication designed to help with depression and anxiety, and doctors seem to think they help because they found a correlation between anxiety and OCD, but it doesn't treat the illness directly. And yet they're going to sit there and pay some brainiac working in an underground laboratory who doesn't have the illness, who claims that his manufactured drugs will be the solution to the problem. But when I am told straight by doctors that they cannot cure me, they can only treat me indefinitely for the rest of my life because there is no cure for OCD, how am I supposed to feel knowing that I'm going to have these thoughts that aren't my own until the day I drop dead or I drop to my knees and weep? I would truthfully rather suffer from cancer than have OCD, because when you have cancer, at least people give a shit about you, and they don't walk all over you and treat you like garbage. And that goes for any other physical disability. Because when it's physical and you can physically see the disability in a person, then you have empathy. But when it's all made up in your head, you laugh and you make jokes about it.
There goes that crazy girl.
She's so weird.
Ask yourself this. When you're standing along the bedside of your 65-year-old grandfather who is dying from leukemia, does anybody stop to think, would anybody dare say, oh, well, he did it to himself? Through years of smoking, neglecting his body, not exercising properly, eating junk food, all of this contributed to him getting cancer. Nobody would dare say that about their grandfather who's dying. And yet all of those things are a choice that he chose of his own free will, and now he suffers the consequences. And yet nobody is going to say that it's his fault. Well, then why the hell is it my fault for having a disease that I was born with and I don't have any control over that? And yet I'm told I'm just making excuses, or I'm coming up with lies, or it's a complete joke. I didn't want to have OCD. I didn't pick from a selection list at birth that this is the card that I wanted. How is it my fault that I suffer? And yet, you're all gonna blame me for not trying hard enough, or I didn't do the medication right, or the counseling, or the therapy. I'm just a stuck-up prick. Ik ben een... When I was passed out in the backyard for 3 hours, coughing myself into a coma because I was choking to death on the fumes of bleach. That was the most pain I had ever been in my entire life. Because I physically could not force my body to stop cleaning with harmful chemicals. When I couldn't open my own eyes or touch them for 2 weeks because I burned my lenses with the chemical fumes of bleach. That was the most pain I had ever been in my entire life. Because I spent 8 hours a day of solid cleaning in a room full of harmful chemicals for 2 solid weeks. You people laugh and make jokes about those who wash their hands 20 times a day. What about me when I wash my hands 200 times an hour? And I did that 5 times a day, spending 5 hours locked inside the bathroom. But OCD is fake. It's a complete joke because everybody has it, right? At least those were the exact words of my former boss. The last time I ever saw him, minutes before he proceeded to ban me from the office because a half-dozen self-aggrandizing jackasses complained to building management about the fact that I wore latex gloves because it freaked them out and they didn't know why. And that eventually cost me my job. In all of the years of counseling and therapy and doctors and medication that I've been through, these things on my hand are the only thing that seems to help. Because if I'm wearing latex gloves and I feel the need to wash, I can just take them off and put them on. I have to stand in the bathroom, breaking my back over a sink for an hour and a half. Washing until there's water all over the floor and the wood from the sink is rotted through. And yet these one and only things that I have as a coping mechanism put a big ass target on me. I can't go into a single grocery store without being asked where this and that and the other because it's just assumed that I work there. And you people think this is a joke.
If you are dyslexic,
press 9, 6, 9, 6, 9, 6, 9, 6, 9, 6, 9, 6, 9.
You know what that feels like? To have a target so big on your back, anyone and their dog will find a justifiable reason to complain about your very existence and get you banned and blocked and kicked out of 1 billion places on Earth. Or how about the time I was on the bus and the guy sitting next to me got off that bus and told one of the security guards that he thinks I might be a criminal because I just happened to be wearing latex gloves, and he'd never seen anybody do that before, and it was weird and freaking him out. And that security guard almost threatened to arrest me on allegations of suspicious activity because of my mental illness. I am a criminal because of who I am! You people treat me like garbage! I almost got arrested for wearing latex gloves on a bus. Oh, but yeah, mental illness is fake. Well, I'm glad that my suffering and my torment can bring happiness to your life, you self-centered piece of shit. Many people have this narrow-minded viewpoint of what it means to have or suffer a mental illness. And it's propagated by people in the media, or other YouTubers for that matter, putting on a show for the audience of, quote, mental illness. Like one such recent YouTuber, known as Onision, who is acting as though he's got a mental illness because he wants to use that as justification to claim his insanity in the court of law. And he seems to think, and I know a lot of you seem to think the same thing, that this is what insanity looks like. Is this what I have to do to prove to you that I have a mental illness? Is that what you want me to do? You want me to rip my shirt off and dump kombucha on myself? Or maybe you won't believe that I'm suffering until you're standing over my coffin when I hang myself at the age of 24 because I didn't get the help that I so desperately needed and ended my own life. I want you to know that I am not currently suicidal, nor do I speak of suicide because I want to make light of the subject, but I use it as a reference to help you understand why. Why your mother, why your brother, why your best friend took their own lives. Because maybe they were asking for help too, and nobody seemed to care. And nobody could provide them with the help that they needed. And then you wonder why thousands of people go jumping off bridges every year. I'm willing to bet, and I don't speak for everyone who is in this situation, that nobody really wants to die. They just want the suffering to end. And in the cases of those people who have reached the point of suicide, the suicide is not because they want to die. It's only because they want the suffering to end, and nothing that they've ever tried makes it go away, and so the last resort is to just kill themselves. As of now, it is currently established by science that this illness that I have cannot be cured. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to suffer either, because a large part of my suffering is caused by society as a whole. And you want to know what can change? Society can change to become more accepting of people like me. I know some people are going to say, oh, you can't expect the whole world to bend to your will just because it makes your life easier. Yeah, well, I wouldn't be the first man in history to bend the world at my own will. What the hell do you think Martin Luther King was doing? One man changed the fucking world! And one might argue for the better. So why the hell can't a single person change the world and bring more acceptance about other issues, like mental disease? Or what about the time when I was pulled over by a cop for speeding, and that resulted in me being forced to get out of the vehicle, go to the back, and open the trunk to prove to the police officer that there wasn't a dead body in my fucking vehicle? Because why else would somebody be driving a vehicle with latex gloves unless they just killed somebody and had the body stuffed in the back? At the very best of times when you suffer mental illness, people are afraid of you. They're scared because they think you're weird or that you're some kind of monster. And at the very worst of times, they kick you down, and they beat you down, and they drive you into the very corner of isolation that causes you to become the monster you see. Ah! Please, I beg for the love of God, this has to stop, because as long as you think my suffering is a joke, I will never be able to receive the treatment that I need to change. One of the biggest problems with things like this Bell Let's Talk Day is there are so many other diseases that get shoved under the rug, because the only ones you'll ever hear about are depression and anxiety. Seems these days everybody has depression. You might think that you're depressed, but in many cases you are not. You're just simply sad. You don't even understand what depression is, what depression looks like. You want to know what depression looks like? Depression is sitting here in this bed for over a month because I don't want to do anything with my life. I've only gotten out of bed to eat and shit and take a shower since frickin' Christmas. Well, that's what depression looks like. What does depression feel like, you might ask? Well, it feels like my heart and my soul have been ripped from my body and smashed into a billion pieces because I don't care about anything anymore. My favorite movies don't entertain me. My favorite video games, I don't care. My favorite hobbies, my favorite pastimes, I just don't honestly care. I don't care if I lived or died. Bell Let's Talk Day also suffers from a severe case of selection bias. Yes, you're going to find the celebrities and the rich billionaires who have mental illness, and you're going to get them to sponsor your event, and you're going to make YouTube videos, and they're going to go on the news and talk about mental health and why it's important. But for every Howie Mandel that you can find me, there's at least 10 other people who are homeless on the street who can't get the help they need because it's too expensive. And for every one of those people, there's 20 other people who are standing at the foot of a bridge considering jumping, and for every one of those people, there's 30 more just as soon go out and get a firearm and shoot up the neighborhood. The problem is not that we're having these days set aside to talk about mental illness. The problem is we're not doing enough damn about it. It's one day in the entire year where the entire world gets together and talks about mental health. Why does mental health have to be a discussion for just one day of the year? It should be talked about every single day, 365 days of the year, till we reach a stage where people like me don't have to lose their job and end up on the streets because of their mental illness. In the past 10 years that they've been doing this Bell Let's Talk Day, have they done a single thing to sway the tide of public's opinion? I would say no, they haven't done jack shit. If this Bell Let's Talk actually worked, then I wouldn't have got kicked out of the office on the grounds of my mental illness. I wouldn't have lost my job because of it either. I wouldn't have been under threat of being arrested on public transportation if Bell Let's Talk Day actually did a damn thing to change the public's opinion.
No, there's no blood test, no biopsy. In fact, for any of the so-called mental illnesses in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So-called mental illnesses.
If you know what this thing here is, it's called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for the Diagnosis of Mental Disorders, Volume 5. This specific edition was released in 2013, and it is the 5th installment in a long-running series of these documents which are used to outline and classify and for the treatment of mental disorders. And every single year, they compound and they grow in size, the number of pages, the number of diseases listed. If you actually read this book, you can use this 970-page document to diagnose every single human emotion under the sun as a mental disorder. It's no wonder my boss is under the impression that mental illness is fake because everyone has it. Because according to this book, every single emotion you felt is a mental disorder. And for every single one of them is going to be a specific drug that treats it. And it's going to cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars out of your pocket each month to pay for this medication that costs 2.5 cents per bottle to produce, with margins of profit upwards of 6,000%. It is clear to me that the health services of this country and of the world have failed me because they don't care about anything more than the bottom line. And the person who produces a cure for a mental disorder will probably get shot on the spot. Because then you can cure people of their disease and fix them instead of having them spend money on bottles of pills for the rest of their mortal existence. But that's not real. Mental illness is fake. I also happened to see an article posted to Twitter recently about the rather unsavory practices of Bell during their yearly Let's Talk Day. Because you see, they encourage people to talk and text about it, and they say that they'll donate to mental health research every time you text, or you tag them in their social media post. But you want to know who suffers statistically the most from mental disorders? People in prison. Most of them have some form of mental disorder that went untreated, and now they're in prison. And as it turns out, the cost of making phone calls or texting people in prison is sky fucking high. So it's nothing more than a money grab for Bell. They're going to encourage prisoners to reach out and talk about mental health, and all the while they're just raking in the cash. Now is not the time for sympathy. You can give me yours if you want, but I literally don't care. Now is not the time for soft-spoken words, or telling me that it's going to be okay, because it will not be okay. The time for talk is over. Over! It's done! Which is why I am suggesting a rebranding of Bell Let's Talk Day. Introducing Bell, it's time to fucking roar! Yeah! Because mental health should be a discussion for every single goddamn day of the year until it isn't a problem anymore.